So on this episode of the Tuff Juice Podcast, I had the privilege and honor of interviewing Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. And he talked about so many things, ranging from the importance of being smart in the midst of this pandemic. And yes, we also got into the election of Wisconsin that's been viral and trending all over social media. And we also talk about the importance of the frontline workers, who are the true heroes in all of this. And what he been binge watching in the midst of all of this. And it might shock you what his answers is. And looking towards the future for the Democratic Party, what are some of the hopefuls? You know, we touched on Joe Biden and so much more. I don't want to give you it all away. Tune in to the Tuff Juice Podcast on the Himalaya app or wherever you get your pods. All right, so first and foremost, Lieutenant Governor Barnes, it's a pleasure and honor to have you, on this show. First off, what have you been up to in the midst of this pandemic?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. It's an honor to be here joining you. But since the pandemic, I still come to the office pretty regularly. As you can see, I'm in the office now, so I'm here at least 3 or 4 days a week, just doing a bunch of Zoom calls, interviews, doing what I can to keep the public engaged and informed. But, personally at home, it's been a lot more relaxed. I only come here and I go right back to the crib. And, at home, I've been catching up on a lot of shows and cooking a lot. I've been cooking so much food. And I get the chance to run a little bit also, just to get some fresh air, get out there and run. I had a marathon that got canceled last week, so I'm a little frustrated about that. But, it is what it is.
Bro, I only can imagine. And you said you've been cooking and, catching up on shows. Like, what is your favorite show right now? Like, I finished Ozark and I just went crazy with the finale of that. So I'm looking forward to the upcoming season.
So, man, I'm guessing I need to catch up on Ozark. I've been going back and finishing some shows that I've been missing out on. I finally caught up with Curb Your Enthusiasm. I went back and finished a show called Treme that's set in post-Katrina, New Orleans. It was written by David Simon, who wrote The Wire also. So it has like a real deep plot line. But Anthony Bourdain also had a part in the show also. And so like there's this big cultural aspect that's connected to the drama that goes on. So it's like all the music and a lot of food culture that's a part of the show as well, which made it was a pretty good show. I liked it a lot. So catching up, watch Ozark.
Oh, that's major, man. To pivot back into the discussion of the pandemic and everything that has been happening, what is your message and also the governor's message, to the people in the front line that's, just sacrificing so much in this horrific time?
Yeah, man, I think people are getting a different view of what frontline workers, what they mean to society, the value that they bring to all of us and all of our lives, and in effect are keeping a lot of us alive. And I think about, back in the day where we had, like the Fight for 15 protest, when that first started, these were workers who were fighting to get $15 an hour. These are the people who are still going to work every day. The people that don't have a luxury to isolate, to self-isolate at home or self-quarantine because they still have to go to work. They still have to earn a check. This is our essential workforce. It's the people that are working at grocery stores, the people that are delivering takeout meals, the people at the restaurant plugging away. But in addition to, police, fire, EMS, EMT, I should say, people like that, bus drivers, folks who've been there as well, who always been, deemed and viewed as essential. But now we see so many others who are joining the ranks. And our message to them is more of a message to the public, is that we have to value, there's value in all work. We have to value all workers, and we have to do everything that we can do to keep them safe, healthy, happy, and also keep them whole. And I'll get into that a little bit, once we get into the discussion about, things that we're trying to do, or I can just take it now because, the governor introduced two legislative packages so far, and one included making sure that there's health care available for our restaurant workers. And you see across the country, there's a push to get them classified as first responders so that they can have access to free childcare, which they deserve, especially in a moment like this. It's different for first responders who get that free childcare. But imagine someone who has to work every day at a grocery store, at a restaurant, who's not making a whole lot of money and still will have to struggle to get childcare at a time like this. And, in many instances, they're probably having to rely on childcare more than in times prior. And so not only are they risking their lives, they are, in many instances, going broke in the process. And that's unfortunate. That was one of the changes that the governor proposed, that we want to get, that we want to make this accessible to those workers. But the assembly was in yesterday, the Senate was in today, and they voted to take, the package that they passed did not include those provisions.
So speaking of the packages and things that have been happening in Wisconsin, the last time we was trending on social media, myself, you, Governor Evers, everybody was, at this correctional facility in Racine, Wisconsin. And we was doing something which was a great cause. And we brought the Milwaukee Bucks and all those individuals. And I seen you in a form that I never seen you before. And this is why I reached out to you personally, because, you was just so real and authentic when you was talking to the inmates, when you was talking to us, so transparent. And initially, about a week ago, I saw that the election booth statewide was open and in the midst of a stay-home order. What was your immediate response to what you've seen in that real time?
Yeah, man, it was very frustrating. And even going back to the whole Racine correctional event that we did. I mean, honestly, those is no different. The people that are there are no different from me. The people I grew up with, people I spend time around, people I'm related to. So, there is that aspect. And I know not a whole lot of people take that time out, but in the people who were there, I saw just a whole lot of what I was used to growing up. People who these aren't evil people. These are people who make mistakes. There are so many folks in high positions who are actually evil, but this is not. These are not those people. These are folks who, in far too many instances, had circumstances that led them down some very difficult paths. And I'm always just conscious of the fact that could be me. That could be some of my best friends. That could be anybody I'm related to. And it has been people I've been related to. It has been some of my best friends at times in my life. So I always remember that, and I never separate myself from that reality. And when it comes to the election, and the fact that it was still held, a statewide election was held in the middle of a pandemic and in the midst of a stay-at-home order, it was irresponsible. The governor tried to move the election date, and they challenged that decision. And the Supreme Court said that the state should move ahead, should move forward with that election, putting people's lives at risk. And it was needless. Needlessly, people had their lives put at risk. And that wasn't democracy at all, because that wasn't a free fair election. And, turnout was still pretty decent. However, folks shouldn't have had to go through that. People shouldn't have had to risk their lives to cast a ballot. And that's not even hyperbole, because we see the rate, we see the mortality rate. People who are actually losing their lives to this virus is more deadly than the flu. And it's also, it seems to be more contagious than the flu, significantly. And putting people in that set of circumstances, putting people in these large crowds, even though social distancing was practiced in the in the process, that still meant that folks were waiting for 2 hours, to vote.
That's
and so
crazy.
It created just this level of chaos that should never be experienced in a free and fair election in any democracy.
So speaking of that experience, like, what's being done to prevent the same thing from happening in November?
Yeah, so before the governor called to push the election back, he tried to have an all mail-in election, which would have been the responsible way to carry out the election. And there are a number of states right now that already have mail-in elections. However, here, you can request an absentee ballot, and I think that was the big problem. Is that the absentee ballot request is an option here in Wisconsin, but the system was overwhelmed because there was just this influx of absentee ballot requests. And a lot of people didn't get their ballot until after election day, so they didn't get a chance to vote because they weren't going to go out there and risk their health to go vote. And my dad, he did get his ballot in time, but he said if it didn't If it didn't arrive on time, there was no way that he was going to go vote in person, which is absolutely understandable. Which, that is not the wrong way to go about things. And myself personally, I felt conflicted encouraging people to go vote, and that's why I didn't encourage anybody to go vote in public. But I told them my message was, if you do go out, please be safe, practice safe social distancing, and take the necessary requirements that will keep you healthy. And I think now the push for November, because who knows when this is going to be over, we need to make sure that we have the capacity built in our clerk's offices across the state and also in our elections commission to be able to handle processing ballots processing ballots to be mailed to all of our registered voters in the event that we are in a similar position that we're in now, or in the event that social distancing guidelines have been reduced but not completely eliminated.
So when you look at the election that did actually still take place, and having 5 booths per the capital of, let's say, Milwaukee, is probably the largest African American city with the population of, I don't know what it is, somewhat under 1 million people, right?
Yeah, 600,000 in Milwaukee, about 1 million in Milwaukee County.
Yeah, so that's crazy. So when you look at the election that's still taking place, like, who does that benefit more? Does it benefit the Democrats, or does it benefit the Republicans? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts there is, there was a Supreme Court seat that Republicans wanted to hold on to, and they saw an opportunity here with there being this mass hysteria, which is justified because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and they want to go ahead and move the election forward, knowing that a lot of people who tend to vote Democrat are those who believe in science and who believe that this pandemic is a real thing, which it is. And given just the responses that we've been getting and the pushback from Republican lawmakers, it was seen as if the disbelief that the not taking this as seriously as we should and the ignoring of the social distancing guidelines seemed to be more of the mindset of a lot of Republicans. And I guess they assumed that their voters would show up, would go out there regardless of the social distancing guidelines, regardless of the threat of getting sick and going out to vote. However, the liberal candidate for Supreme Court ended up winning the race. So these things you really can't predict, but there's certainly a thought process out there that would have supported their reasoning for keeping this election on the day that it was.
Well, you heard it here before, and this might not be the last time. For sure, will not be the last time that you hear me talking about the Raycon earbuds by Raycon. It's amazing. Whether you're working at home, which we all should be working from home right now, listening to your favorite music, or you're shooting a podcast like the one that I'm doing right now. You already know Raycon earbuds start at half the price other than any premium wireless earbuds on the market. And they sound just amazing. In fact, better than a lot. Their newest model, Everyday E25 earbuds, are the best ones with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and more compact design that gives you a nice noise isolating fit. Raycon's wireless earbuds are so comfortable, perfect for conference calls like the Zoom call that I'm doing right now. It's simply amazing. Unlike some of your wireless options, Raycon earbuds are both stylish and discreet, with no dangling wires, no stems to distract anyone during video calls. You heard me talk about how this company was co-founded by Ray J, and you see why everybody's obsessed with the Raycons. Pick up a pair and see what the hype is all about. Now's the time to get the latest and greatest Raycon. Get 15% off your order. buyraycon.com/toughjuice. That's buyraycon.com/toughjuice for 15% off your Raycon wireless earbuds. buyraycon.com/toughjuice. So when like our viewers and listeners going to see this, what would you say to someone that says, my vote don't matter, and it's rigged, or my opinion don't matter, all these different narratives that's thrown out there? What would you say to that voter?
I would say your vote definitely matters. I mean, as a person who goes out there to get votes. I vote myself, right? Like, I'm not like encourage people to go do something that's not worthwhile or not beneficial or doesn't work to help at least solve the problems that we have. I mean, the fact is, with these elections that are coming up, these are the most important elections. Well, every important is the most election important until the next one. But the fact is, if voting wasn't so important, they wouldn't try to take away the right to vote. They wouldn't try to make it harder for you to cast a ballot if it wasn't important. And the fact is, so many races are won or lost because people didn't think it was that important. And I can even point to 2016, where a lot of people stay home for whatever reason. And now we have the president that we have. This could have been avoidable if people showed up to vote. But also, I mean, candidates do have a responsibility to connect with voters, to make their case, to prove why, they are worthy of the vote of the people that they represent or want to represent.
So this election in particular, 2020, and this voting process, why is it so different and so important, than probably some of the past? And also, what are your thoughts on Joe Biden?
Yeah, so I'll say, I mean, you can look how reckless this administration has been on so many different levels when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to healthcare, but specifically the situation that we're in now. They were briefed on this a long time ago and could have had a response in place that would have limited the number of deaths that we're experiencing. At first you had the president who brushed this off as some sort of hoax, and now is embracing it for the reality that it is, and placing blame on other people, and the blame falls explicitly on the White House in this matter. Also, I mean, you look at the CDC funding, the Center for Disease Control, the funding that was slated to be cut, the positions that would have addressed pandemics and infectious diseases, so that position being eliminated. You see, just as recently as yesterday or today, the proposal to eliminate funding for the World Health Organization so that we can have a concerted response globally to the pandemic. These things just don't make sense. We don't have a president that's up to the task, that's ready to carry out the work that's going to improve the lives of people across the country. And, my thoughts with Joe Biden, I can go back to Barack Obama's message yesterday, where he stated that, the campaign that he ran in 2008 would be much different than the campaign that he ran if he were running this year, because the world is changing. The world has changed. The world is constantly changing. And I do think that, Donald Trump remains a very real threat to the world. He remains a threat to the livelihoods of marginalized people across this country. And, nobody is totally 100% wrong on everything. And there are some things that people will point to and say, well, what about this? He did this, he did that. And, people used to point to the economy and say, well, the economy is doing well, but that was completely inflated. And that was a house of cards, as you can see how the economy is collapsing right in front of our eyes. And the record number of people who are without a job right now, many of those who may not even be able to return to a job once the pandemic is over. We need real leadership. We need real experience. And, I'm certainly going to be voting for the former Vice President, Joe Biden, because I think that even, people have, reasons to pause, which could be justified. I get it. And, any candidate has got to come to grips with those issues. However, the task is too great a hand, and the future of this nation, the future of the world, quite frankly, rests on the outcome of this election. And I don't know how we keep going forward this way. We need real leadership, and we need a vision. And I think that we have to. We have to do something different. What's going on now? It's just not working for far too many people.
Oh, that's crazy, man. And, something else that, I saw that just jumped off the screen at me was, following this election, the Wisconsin Republican Party chairman, Andrew Hitt, said, the lesson to learn is we can have an election still in this scenario. What was your response to that? And do these obvious efforts to rig the election, ultimately favor the Democrats, or do it favor the Republicans?
So my response to that is like, how long are people going to be irresponsible? Just that did not prove that it worked. It proved that people, when they see their rights being taken away, when people sense voter suppression is happening, they're going to step up and show up to vote. So it backfired. Does not mean that the process worked. The process was an abject failure. The amount of people who had to wait in line, the hoops that people had to jump over just to cast a ballot. It did not work at all. Like an election happened. That doesn't mean it worked as an election should work. Like I said before, it's like hard to qualify who's actually the beneficiary. And I don't think there is a beneficiary in this sort of situation where democracy itself is being compromised in this way.
No doubt. What impact will the Democrats, narrowing the Republican advantage on the state Supreme Court to 4-3 have going forward, particularly in the November election?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's helpful in the sense that you look at the decisions that come down from the Supreme Court, some of the extreme decisions, and hopefully those 4 remaining conservative justices have a little pause now and think twice before issuing some of the decisions that they've been issuing, or decisions that will be parallel to those that they have been handed down for the last several years. And I would say going into November, I would see that as a shot in the arm for people. I would see that as something that's motivating in a state that lost to Donald Trump in 2016, which we never should have in the first place. But I think it should create a level of optimism for liberals, for progressives, for Democrats going into November.
No doubt. What has this crisis shown you about our healthcare system and the economy and the need for reform?
Yeah, the healthcare system has been in trouble for a long time. A lot of the alarms that have been sounded for the last several years, seemingly every election cycle, I think is people are really starting to realize. The fact is, so many people. You look at the disparities, the number of people who've been primarily impacted. You look at the Black community that's been primarily impacted, and you look at the access to healthcare. You look at income inequality and other issues that people are dealing with, and all this stuff trends in the same direction. And so when folks don't have access to reliable healthcare, you have these huge copays, huge deductibles. People often forego healthcare. People don't get regular checkups. A lot of folks don't have primary care physicians. And these are people who aren't necessarily going to go to the hospital if they feel sick. They're going to try to tough it out because they don't want to come back to a surprise bill. They don't want to they don't want a trip to the doctor to become a long-term financial burden. And I think that is the biggest problem that we have in healthcare now, is the fact that this for-profit model only, seeks to serve, profit-driven motives, and not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily put the well-being of people first. So we need a more universal healthcare model in this country to make sure that people can be covered. We need to make sure that free testing is available, which was a part of the package, and that got taken out of the package also. Another part of the package that should have been there is the treatment for people, who have come down with COVID-19, and making sure, mandating that private insurers cover that. And that wasn't a part of the package that passed today and yesterday. I think that these are the real problems, that we see. The access is one issue, the affordability, but also, the moral part of it, because people, can lose their health insurance for a number of reasons. And, what's a person supposed to do if they don't have health insurance? I don't know if you listen to rap, but Zero said, you don't have health insurance, you're good as dead. Even in an emergency, no money means no hospital bed. Yeah,
for real. That's deep. And when you look at this live sports as a whole, I saw the great Dr. Faust had came on national television, and he was doing a podcast or social media or something, and he said that live sports, with no essentials in the crowd, could possibly come back with constant testing. What's your thoughts on that? And I know you're probably a huge Bucks fan, and with a chance of them possibly realistically winning a championship this season, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. I think that the measures that keep people safe be helpful. You look at Florida, where the governor there declared WWE to be essential, and they're still having, and they're having wrestling matches with no audience, right? Like, it's trouble. Like, I believe they'll figure out something. I just don't know what that looks like. I don't know what's the safest way to do it, and I don't even know how that holds on. Like, it would be tough. I'm just trying to imagine, watching a basketball game without crowd reactions. I mean, you would obviously know better than me. I don't know how you would even feel playing with no audience, just showing up. This Wilt Chamberlain style. You got to hold it. So
everything delayed and everything.
Yeah.
You've been talking about and you touched on just all types of things and binge watching shows and etc. Curb your enthusiasm. What's your thoughts on ESPN dropping this documentary, a 10-part documentary of Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever to play the game? Are you going to be tuned in?
Yeah, I mean, when does that come out?
April 19th.
April 19th. I am sure to be watching it. If I DVR it if I don't catch it live. And it's needed. It's needed in a time like this too. Yeah,
man, no doubt. And this ultimately, when you look at all the work that you're doing, groundbreaking work, getting out to the people, being accessible to the people, like, what do you ultimately want your legacy to be?
Yeah, when it comes to legacy, I just want people to know that, I gave it my best, that I try to come up with new ideas. I always want to do the things that hadn't been done before.
That's deep, bro. Because I think that, when I look at this platform and you sharing this knowledge on this platform, a lot of, young men and women from different walks of life are going to be inspired by your words. They're going to hold on to your words. They're going to move forward accordingly off something you said on this podcast. And a lot of elected officials, don't, make time even when they don't have time. So, we appreciate you coming on and it's giving us wealth of knowledge. And, you always got my vote, brother. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, man. I really do. Thank you for getting this information out to people. I mean, and your service to the community too, man. It's easy for people to forget about home, especially, like cities like Racine and Milwaukee that get forgotten about. You haven't forgotten about them. So,
no doubt, brother. Thank you, man. Appreciate you coming on, bro.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Yeah, you too.